This morning we started learning about the Igeret HaRamban, where I suggested and recommended for each one to read it every day after Shacharit, or if you can't do it every day, at least do it once a week. For the ones of you who don't read Hebrew, then I have a PDF with the English translation. It can be found on my website. If you want, I'll send it to you also personally. And you can read the English just that you understand what you're reading, but nevertheless, always better to read in Hebrew. But specifically here, because this is not really a text from the Torah, rather it's a letter, then even if you read it in English, it's just as good. Now, today I want to talk about very briefly, because we're going to dwell a lot about the Igeret HaRamban, especially in our third quarter, where we're going to start really working on our Midot. With a very small preparation, the Ramban, the very, very special individual, the Ari HaKadosh, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria calls him the last real Mekubal. And this is the Ari HaKadosh. The Ramban lived about 1,000 years ago, 900 years ago, give or take. And the Ari HaKadosh says on him that he was the last real Mekubal. And he left texts, unbelievable depths of text. When he was in his 70s, he came to Eretz Israel. He was kicked out of Spain. And there's a long story, but I don't want to talk about his history so much. And then, of course, he came to Yerushalayim. According to his text, you see that Yerushalayim was a place of hefker. There was nothing there. Anybody could do whatever he wanted. There's a famous story that for Yom Kippur, he didn't have a minyan. He had to finally found like two Jews that were merchants, and he got them to the minyan, and they had a minyan for Yom Kippurim. But right before he left the world, he left a few letters to his son, that his son's name was also Nachman, his name was Moshe, and he was the son of Nachman. And obviously he called his son Nachman, even though that's about 600 years before Rabbi Nachman from Breslev. There's no connection to Rabbi Nachman. But nevertheless, he left him a list of letters. And each letter is unbelievable, the wisdom behind it. The famous one, of course, is this Igeret HaRamban, which, like I said a few times, highly recommended to read it every day. When I became observant, this was my guide. In the morning when I was talking about that, I didn't want to say the word, this was my Torah, but this was my Torah. This was how I followed my first footsteps in Avodat Hashem. Now, we're going to learn a lot from Igeret HaRamban. I'm not going to even translate it now or explain it now. I just want to touch about one thing today. And even though it's more appropriate and shayach and connected to the third quarter, where we're really going to start working on our midot, first quarter, if you remember, we were mainly action. Now, second quarter, we're going to focus a lot on prayers, different prayers. Third quarter, we're going to start working on our midot. So we're going to learn much more from that in the third quarter. But since we already started talking about this in the morning, I want to touch one thing. First of all, it's important to know that this is a letter is mainly talking about Musar and what's called Hanhaga, how you should conduct yourself. And most important, it's about Derech Eretz. And Derech Eretz, there's really no word for it in English besides being a mensch, being a decent, honest human being. And as our sages say in the Mishnah, Derech Eretz Kadma LaTorah. First be a mensch, then go and apply the Torah that you learn. Now, he's mainly focusing on two major midot here. And a midah is a characteristic or a character trait, but midah in Hebrew is also translated as measure or measurement, which the words in Hebrew always make much more sense, because if I have a characteristic that I'm quick to anger, I'm judgmental, impatient, lazy, these are my characteristics. But in Hebrew, when I say midah, and I'm looking at the word measurement, is how much impatient are you? A little or a lot? How charitable are you? A little or a lot? There comes a measure here. One can say, I'm very charitable. Or yeah, how much? You're charitable when it's easy for you, when you're charitable all day long. So the midah is not only your characteristics, also how much of it do you have. And I said it so many times that our real focus in this world is tikkun hamidot, is the refinement of my character. And we learned it from the book Sha'arei Kedusha and many others, Tomer Dvorah. These are all books that we're going to start reading again in the third quarter, because all these books are about tikkun hamidot. But he's focusing here on major two midot, two characteristics that are on the positive sides and two characteristics that are on the negative side. And that's mainly what he's focusing here. On the negative side, he's focusing on anger and pride. Kaas ve'geava. Defining that geava, pride, is the worst of all midot. And of course, this will birth kaas, this will birth anger. The Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, and also the Rabbi Chaim Vital both explain in the books Tomer Dvorah and Sha'arei Kedusha that the top of all the bad midot is geava, arrogance, ego, pride. And if chas v'shalom somebody steps on your ego, it will birth right away two midot, which will be, of course, anger and sadness. And from that, it will birth more midot, etc. He's focusing here on kas and geava, anger and pride, as kind of almost equal to each other. On the positive side, he has another two good midot, which is, of course, yirah, being fearful, and mainly fearful from Hashem, yirat shamayim, God-fearing. And the other one is anava, is being humble. And now we're not going to talk about the good part, we're going to talk about the bad part, where he and many others, I mean, if you go to our history, to our text, and you dissect midat hakaas, the characteristic of anger, you will find an ocean of text just about kaas, just about anger, how bad it is, how devastating it is, how detrimental it is. It's so devastating that it can ruin a person's life just by having this anger in him. And usually what happens with anger, it's just a, you know, in Hebrew it says itlahamut shel rega. It's just you get angry for a second and very quickly it comes down. There was one individual that really wanted to work on his midot. So what he did, he bought a special suit and he called it the suit of anger. And whenever you want to be angry, you have to wear the suit. So every time he would get angry, run to get the suit. Till he put the suit on, he would calm down. So, because really anger, it's like a flash of fire. And if you feed it, then it will sustain. But if you ignore it, it will come down right away. This is what's called in Hebrew, hitlahamut shel rega. Excitement in a negative way of a moment, of a fraction. To a point that the Zohar says that a person can lose his entire olam haba with one moment of anger. Adam me'abed et olamo b'sha'a achat. A person can lose his entire life, his world to come, with one action of anger. And the Ari Kadosh, we're going to talk about that, by the way, probably in the third quarter and more in the fourth quarter, about all the tikkunim that are a little bit more, I don't know if to say serious, but more, that we have to take them more serious. Tikkun is a rectification. So we read Tikkun HaKlali, very good. And we do many other tikkunim. But we're going to get to, I didn't decide yet if it's going to be connected to the third quarter or the fourth quarter, where we're going to have to do a serious Tikkun Abrit, Tikkun Nida, Tikkun Goya. But one of the hardest ones is Tikkun HaKaas. We know that for each rectification, for each Tikkun, there's a certain amount of fasts one needs to do. So for Tikkun Abrit, the Arizal says 84 times. For Tikkun HaKaas, it's 151 times that a person needs to fast. So we're going to see how we can do a Tikkun of Kaas without the fasting. You can redeem it with money and many other things. But the point is that one needs to do Tikkun for Kaas. Just think for 1 second, or maybe take 5 minutes, how many times you ruin things with anger. How many relationships, business deals, situations, because a moment of anger, because you couldn't control yourself. Now, we all have anger, by the way. Don't think you're the only one. And outside in the public, most people are calm and relaxed. Go to their home and nobody's there. You'll see things flying and the tones going to very high levels. Next to people, how are you? And I'm very relaxed. But not in the home. And again, it's not that somebody, this is we're all suffering from some mental disability. We all have anger in us. Where the anger is coming, we're not going to even touch this right now, but very briefly, I think that a large portion of the anger that we have in us comes from the radiation that we are exposed to the junk that we eat, and to the environment that I'm in. The movies that I see, the music that I hear, and everything around me. Take all that and refine that, 80% of your anger will be eliminated. Especially now in our generation, people are like electrocuted from radiation, and of course they're angry all day long. And then of course add to that their nutrition. And bad nutrition will make you so agitated, impatient, and angry, you're gonna lose it like that. And many others, of course. And then of course the other rest of the whatever percentage left is coming from many different places. The Talmud says that if you see a person that has a lot of anger, that's a sign for you that that person has more sins than mitzvot. So if a person is very angry all the time with the radiation, there's a very good chance that he has a lot of sins and they're overpowering his mitzvot. So we all have anger, and we all need to deal with it, and we all need to understand the severity of the anger, and we all need to do tshuva for our anger. Now, there's a very famous story with Hillel. I'm sure you're familiar with Hillel and Shammai, that he was known to be very in control about his anger. And there's a story that one time somebody tried to get him there was a bet between a few people, and they wanted to see if they can get him angry. And the bet was for a very large amount, 400 zuz. 400 zuz, I don't even know how to compare it to currency in our generation. That it would probably be tens of thousands of dollars. And there was a bet between two individuals, and one individual came to him while he was showering in the mikveh Erev Shabbat and screamed, "Who's Hillel? Who's Hillel? Where's Hillel?" And he came out of Shabbat. "What happened? Don't ask, I have a life and death matter, a halacha question." So he gets dressed, he gets all wiped out. "What's the question?" Then he asks him some nonsense, some real nonsense question. "For that you took me out of the shower?" He goes back to the shower, gets undressed, goes into the mikveh, and this thing repeated itself a few times, and every time he told him it's an emergency, and the question was like some real ridiculous question. And of course he didn't get angry. Any other normal person will get angry and lose his patience. And at the end this person screamed at him something along the line like, "Damn you, that you should be more people like you in our nation." He says, "Why?" He says, "Because I just lost 400 Jews because of you." But he couldn't get him to be angry. Now, in this Igeret, in this letter, he's talking a lot about the anger in us. And we all have anger, like I said it not once and not twice. And the first thing that he says, if you want to be saved from Idat HaKas, from this anger in you, is always speak soft. Tamid tedaber benachat. Don't raise your voice. If you want to maybe educate your kids and pretend that you're upset, raise your voice a little bit. But don't ever raise your voice, because when you raise your voice, that's the spark that will ignite the anger. And more than that you always should pray to the Kadosh Baruch Hu not to bring you to a state of anger. We spoke about the Birkot HaShachar 2 days ago, and I told you, please, I hope you're listening to what I'm saying and not just nodding with your heads. But I told you, please, take 5 minutes out of your morning to read Birkot HaShachar, the morning prayers, slowly. Focus on the words and meditate on what you're saying there. Now, according to how you're looking at me, I don't know how many of you really looked at the words, but one of the prayers that we say there is, don't bring me into anger. We talked about it in this morning. Don't bring me into a point of a test. Al tevieni lidei nisayon. I don't want to be tested. Thank you so much. And also, al tevieni lidei kas. Don't bring me to a situation of kas. Now, how to control your anger, that's going to be a whole course. We're not going to talk about now how to control your anger. I can tell you already, I don't know if it's connected. Everything is connected, of course, but it's unbelievable how today we're talking about anger. We started talking about Igeret HaRamban, and I'm telling you on a personal level that today, everything that can go wrong in my life went wrong, to a point that To a point that even now when I was reading the Tikkun HaKlali, this flies like, get out of here. But literally, from the morning, everything that could go wrong went wrong. And half of it is really nonsense, really, when you're thinking about it. But I'm sure you all have that day that everything goes wrong to a point that you feel like, so unbelievable Hashgacha Pratit, that's my day up until now, and it's only 6:45. I don't know what's waiting to me till midnight. But I was just, sometimes it's a little bit ironic and hilarious that I'm like, I'm going to talk about anger today, and we're going to talk about Igeret HaRamban. So the Yetzer Hara has to come like an annoying fly to get me out of my state of calm and out of my state of being quiet to see if he can get me angry. And really, when you're thinking about it, the Yetzer Hara, a lot of people think the Yetzer Hara wants you to sin, which is not far from the truth. But the Yetzer Hara says, you're going to sin whether I come to you or not. The Yetzer Hara has all sorts of different agendas. One of them, we spoke about it many times, he wants to get you sad. When you're sad, you're not functioning when you're sad. And the Yetzer Hara is professional, how to get you sad. Sad, no energy. And then, of course, he wants to get you out of your kelim, out of your state of calm, out of your peace. And he was going to come in many different ways. Why? Because in our mind, anger is not a sin. It's just a emotion. But really, is a sin. It's one of the worst sins that we have. And what does it say in the Igeret HaRamban? Kol hakoes, kol minei gehenam sholtim bo. When a person is angry, he is not only receptive, he becomes a chariot to all the demons, spirits, mara'in, bishin, anything from Gehenam to get dressed in him. So when I lose my temper, I basically give the vehicle keys of my body to the other side of holiness to control me. So I say things that are not nice. I behave not nice. I make horrible decisions. I hurt other people. And after a few minutes that I calm down, if I have an ego that is out of control, then of course everybody's fault. I didn't do nothing. But if you have a little bit of anava, then you're saying, wow, now how am I going to fix this? How am I going to get out of that? So we have here a few horrible midot that we really need to work on. And a big part of this 40-day journey is not only to fast and not to talk Lashon Hara. That's one of the many. We need to also control our midot. And we need to put the midot in check, where I'm out of line. And a huge part of our tshuva is our anger and the fact that I'm judgmental and that I'm arrogant and my ego and that I'm impatient. This is a big part of the tshuva. The Rambam, Maimonides says in Ilchot Tshuva that a big part of the tshuva is not only for the physical things, is also tshuva for anger, for impatience, for being judgmental and so forth. So since we want to take something practical, first of all and most important, I highly recommend, it helped me a lot. I mean, when I was secular, before I became observant, my friends used to call me boom pitom. Now I'll have to explain and translate. Boom is an explosion. I'm sure it's pretty universal, the word boom, right? Boom. But boom is also a punch to the face. Pitom is suddenly. I would lose my temper in a second, right away a punch will come out. So, and no breaks on the mouth. The mouth was deadly, but also physically. And I don't know why, it's irrelevant right now why, but I had tons of anger. I had a lot of anger issues when I was young. And it came out in a very violent way. Nobody wanted to mess with me. Nobody wanted to he's having a bad day. My poor parents, but I broke half the house. But I can tell you already that this Igeret, this letter, I used to read it every day. For years, every day I would read it. But I wouldn't read it in the speed of light. I would read it like I want to read it. And I would focus on the words. And I can tell you that it gave me real good tools how to control the inner anger. Now sometimes you're angry because it's 40 degrees outside and you're just agitated and you're sweaty, and that's not real anger. It's just sweaty. But the reality is that if somebody says something against you, somebody does something against you, there's going to be a lot of anger built in inside. And that's, there's many types of anger. There's the anger when somebody gets you at the parking spot. There's the anger that you, I don't know what, somebody says something against you, but then there's anger that is a built-in anger, and it's cooking and cooking like a pot of chunt on low flame, and it's just ready to explode. So, right now, what we need to focus on is not where the anger is coming from, not where it's going. We're going to slowly start focusing on how do I put it in control. Now, one of the first things to understand that is what's going to birth anger is ego, is gava. Because if you hurt my pride, I will get angry. If you talk against me, I will get angry. If you do anything to me, I will get angry. And that's gava, that's my pride. Now, you can't really work on your gava. It's very, very hard to have some type of a system to diminish your pride or ego or your arrogance. It has to come from the other side. It has to come from empowering the midat ha'anava, is being humble. In all the midot, and we're going to talk about it in future classes, when we're really going to start to work on our midot, which is really the highlight of our tshuva in our life, is it's almost impossible to refine the bad ones, rather you empower the good ones. And the good ones, they come in pairs. So if you work on your midat ha'anava, being humble, by default, the leumatze, the mirrored one, geava, will start lowering down. There's no certain practice that you can work on your geava. Right, there is, but it's easier to inject more positive and you minimize it. So we're going to more learn about this, but I can tell you now, just as a few tools. First of all, highly recommended, read the Igeret HaRamban. You don't understand Hebrew? Read it in English. And I'm sure it's also translated to other languages. We're going to look for that. More than that, the first thing that he tells you is always talk quiet. Talk low. Don't let, because what happens is when you let out already high tones, it will lead already to more screaming. And most important, in Birkot HaShachar, like I told you, focus on your prayer. And say it slowly and carefully. And pray to the Kadosh Baruch Hu, I don't want to get angry. So I'm giving you an example because today, Bemet, everything that I did or encountered today went wrong. To a point that it's like enough. And things that are, some things can drive you crazy, some things you don't really care about them. And how they say, when it pours, it rains, it rains, it pours, however you say it. So I at some point I was just laughing and saying, this is just too funny that I'm preparing a class to talk about anger, and the Yetzer Hara says, oh yeah? Give me a few minutes, I'm going to get you angry. And of course, you need a lot of patience and a lot of experience how to not to lose it. Because if you lose it, that moment of anger, that's what ignites everything. And if you know how to calm down for 3-4 seconds, count till 20, say serenity now, it doesn't really matter. But calm down, you see the anger passes, and then you can deal with what bothers you. And then you see, okay, everything can be dealt with. Everything can be worked on. With that said, I will leave you with this. I'm telling you already that, it says in the beginning of the Igeret, Kol ha'koes kol minei gehinam shultim bo, every person that gets angry and can't control his anger, all the species of Gehenom, of hell, control him. And then he says, Ve'en ra'a en Gehenom, everything evil and bad is called Gehenom. And when it says, Ve'kasher tinatzel min ha'kas, and when you know how to save yourself from kas, from anger, az ta'ale al libcha midat ha'anava. Then the midah of anava, of being humble and humility, will come upon you. And then of course he says much more things, but ba'avur hanava ta'ale libcha midat ha'ira. If you have anava, you're going to start having also yira from the Kadosh Baruch Hu. And you always have to remember where you come from, who's the the one who's going to judge you at the end of the day. "Da milifnei mi ata omed." But he gives you a lot of tools here. We're going to go through them and more practically. But even if you read it, this is very simple words. It's not something so difficult. But the reality is that anger is the source of most of the problems. Marriages that are broken, relationships with kids, parents, business, everything is because a person cannot control his anger at the wrong time. So this is something that we really want to focus on. How do I put my anger in check? Now, a lot of people might say now, what is he talking about? I'm not an angry person. That's very good if you don't get angry a lot. But you have to be also honest with yourself. How many times you get angry? And some people are really, really have a lot of anger. And some people, even if they get angry once a month, that's enough. But the second that you get angry, you are literally becoming a vessel, a chariot, a tool to the other side of holiness to control you. And then your thoughts are distorted. Your mouth says things that you're going to be sorry for them for the rest of your life. Your behavior is inappropriate. You destroy things in a way that sometimes are almost irreversible. And I think everyone has. Very few people don't have the midah, this characteristic of anger. And the thing is that the anger can come in so many different ways. So before we start working, and why am I focusing now on anger, even though I'm telling you that we're going to work on the midot in the third week, is because this is one of the worst midot that has to be put under a microscope. This is one of the first things. Being stingy, judgmental, quick to anger, impatient, all these are important. But the anger, if that's in some type of a control, then you already did 50 to 80% of your work is going to be easier to do. And usually the anger is going to come in things that you're not really preparing. It's not that somebody throws something in your face and you lose it. The anger can come in you trying to register to some website and it doesn't work and you, or I'm just giving you one example on a menu, or anything. You order something, something else comes. You waited for something for 3 weeks, the order was messed up. And all these little things, you have to constantly see how the Yetzer Hara is trying to get you out of your balance. And that's many times the daily routine. I told you already, I think maybe 1,000 times, that when you wake up in the morning, and I told you have to say Modeh Ani. Besides saying the words Modeh Ani, sit on the bed for a few seconds. You might not see it physically, but in the morning a note comes falling from the sky right next to you. It comes something along like this, you see like the note, and it's like, whoop, and it will, see, Shmuel got it, and if you would have the right vision, you would look at the note, anger. What? And the note says, what's going to be your test today? Patience. I have no problem with patience. Then you put your leg down on the floor, and there's a toy, patience, I got it. So in the morning, you get a note coming like from Hashem. While you're saying Modeh Ani, you just have to be receptive to say, what's the test for today? Now try to notice what's going to happen in the first 30 minutes of your day. That's going to be your test. Either anger, either impatience, either judgmental, whatever it is. But Hashem gives us a little sign in the morning, what do you have to work on today? Just that we're so in a rush to get up, we're not even noticing, what is Hashem going to want from me today? And you know how I kind of find out what Hashem wants from me today? Is I read the morning prayers quietly and slowly. And whatever suddenly I get my focus on, today is going to be, So Hashem shows you in many different ways. Because if you look at the morning prayers, you'll see all the types of things that you don't want to be tested with. Al tavieni lidei choli, don't make me sick. Al tavieni lidei kas, don't bring me to be angry. Al tavieni lidei this and that. The point we want to take from that, a lot of the anger and all this is just a test to see how far Hashem can push you. Hashem wants to see, not if you're necessarily going to sin today. He wants to see if you're going to lose your temper. And some days it's not about temper. Some days it's going to test your patience. And on other days it's going to test your how judgmental you are. And many other things. But anger is a bad one. We need to focus on it. We need to work on it. And there are many different tools, and you want to get to a point that you're calm, relaxed, easy to speak with, easy to communicate. You don't take all your anger on your kids or your poor wife that didn't do anything, or husband to some others. But you have to put yourself in check. How many times my impatience and anger came on somebody else that didn't do anything? How many times you just screamed at your kid? What did the kid do? It just came in the wrong time. And how more comfortable it is for everybody when you are relaxed and calm. Your blood pressure is not so high. You're more easygoing. This is one thing that we really need to focus on, especially now in such a powerful journey that we took. And I'm guaranteeing to you that since we're focusing on it, then we're going to get a lot of tests when it comes to anger. Just remember, always think a few seconds, calm down, put yourself in check, go get that suit, the suit of anger. And there are many different methods, but let's focus right now on the three that I told you. Read the Igeret HaRamban at least once a day. Then make sure that you always talk soft. And the third one, pray to the Kadosh Baruch Hu. Don't bring me to anger. Let me be calm. Things will work out. I know things are not always as how I want them, but everything has a solution. And the Kadosh Baruch Hu, sometimes when He makes something doesn't work, you get angry, but it's Hashem's way to tell you, this is not for you right now. Don't go down to that street. Don't deal with this situation right now. Ignore the situation. Elevate yourself to a higher spiritual place that you see things from above. Not easy, but definitely a big mountain that we have to conquer, a big obstacle that we have to work on. I can tell you already, and he says this in the Igeret, you bring yourself to a level that you don't have anger, you win Chayei Olam Haba. Because you're not going to lose your Olam Haba because of the wrong words. How many times a person gets offended, and as a retaliation or revenge will say something so devastating and can ruin a person's entire life because he knows some secret about so-and-so that said something about him, and he goes and says it to the entire world from a moment of anger. He can't take these words back. And this is one example out of many, of course. Hashem should help us that we should be able to put our anger under control, that we should always be calm, peaceful. This is called Menuchat HaNefesh. This is one of very big things that we all want to have. This is like, I don't know how you would say it in English, to maybe tranquility. Menuchat HaNefesh is that you're very, an inner peace. You're at peace with yourself. You don't get angry, upset, impatient. These thoughts, and many unfortunately, many suffer from that. So Bezrat Hashem, we should pray to the Kadosh Baruch Hu to bless us to always have the Yirah, the right fear, the right thoughts, healthy thoughts that will help us go through this. And by that, we're paving a very secure way to really refine myself. And really, that should be my goal. It's not how many mitzvot I put in my arsenal. It's how much I refine myself. It doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. That's our mission in this world. Rabbi Chaim Vital says that in the Hakdama, in the introduction for the book Sha'arei Kedusha, Gates of Holiness, and he says the mitzvot are very important, but really we came to this world to do tikkun hamidot. We came to refine our characteristics, our character traits. Like a dirty diamond, and Hashem says, here's a diamond, polish it for me. Here's your soul, polish the soul. And when you give it back, Elokai neshama shenatata bi torai, the soul that you gave to me, it's pure. Let me polish it. And then I will give the soul back polished. How do I polish my midot, my soul? Is that I work on my midot. So this is a very long journey that we're going to start taking. And one of the biggest ones is the arrogance, ego, pride, geava, which will definitely lead anger, birth anger. And Bezrat Hashem, only Bezrat Hashem, then we should be very successful to put ourselves in the right track, that when I'm calm, relaxed, I'm focused on my thoughts and feelings, then I can really serve Hashem with a real intention and get to myself to the goal, to the purpose where I'm trying to get. Bezrat Hashem should make us very, very successful.